All right, let me admit one more person, and I think we're ready to go. So, thanks for joining me. This is a great conference. I've done it before and really liked it. But we're going to talk about assessing math discussions in the online environment. Don't know why my slides want to keep moving on, but they do. So, not only are we going to talk about how to assess math assignments, but we're going to talk about um, designing good math discussions and focusing on moving students to affix to a growth mindset based on how we do our assessments and other little details like that I'm really looking forward to sharing what you do and what you've learned as well. So I'm here to learn from you as well. So I think we'll have a great exchange of ideas and I'm looking forward to it. So this keeps wanting to advance, so let's do it. Um, I won't read this slide to you. Hopefully, I won't read any slides to you, but these are the topics, the things we're going to talk about as we look at online discussions um, and how we can appropriately assess them. So we'll just dive in. I think well, I shouldn't say the most important thing because I'll say that on every slide, but I think it's really, really important to get faculty input when you are looking at your discussions. If if you're creating a new class, I suggest inviting everybody that might teach it. And if you're revising a course, I think it's a good idea to invite instructors who typically teach it. But you also might want to invite people who um, teach the class before it or after it. Um, and when you're creating a new course, it can be a free-for-all, brainstorm ideas. And when you're revising, certainly start with what's working and what's not working. So I've worked at South University. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Ruth Lane at South University. I'm the program director for Math University for South University. And I've been there for probably 18 years. And so now, once I started working full time at South University, I didn't work anywhere else. But before then, I worked probably like many adjuncts at several different universities. And you get a lot of experience that way and you learn a lot. But when you're only teaching at one university, um, you're just not exposed to as many different resources and tools and approaches that other universities use. So another reason for faculty input is that other faculty members are going to have great ideas that you might not have thought of. So I don't think I've had one time when I've designed a course or revised a course where I didn't use suggestions from them because they're fantastic. I also suggest it's tempting to have a one-time meeting and then that's it. I think it's a good idea to follow up again, maybe after the course has launched or after you've gone farther down the development path. But you can also maybe think about having a SharePoint site or I have a Math Teams site, and people can put resources that they've developed or ideas. And it's just good to have an ongoing sharing opportunity, even if it's not by meeting. But I think meetings are great because people will brainstorm with you. So think about when you're creating discussion prompts, what you want to assess. So a very important thing, as important as faculty input, is making sure that what you cover in your discussion prompts are aligned with your course outcomes. So ours are called administrative course outlines. Yours might be called something else, but um, just make sure that your prompts follow the topics that you're covering in your class. I know that goes without saying, but it's just easy to go in a different direction. And then think about how students will submit a discussion response. Some options are asking them to type their work in the discussion response box, requiring that they only use Word documents for submissions, asking them to submit handwritten work. I think there's pros and cons to all three of those. I will accept any of those three. You can also ask them to create a lesson with a PowerPoint demonstration, or ask them to create a video that explain, shows them explaining a concept, or even a phone conversation with you. So there's pros and cons to those. One challenge is students who don't have the So hardware, maybe. So there's, or scheduling a phone call might be really difficult. So there's pros and cons to all that, but all things you can consider. And then think about the purpose of your online discussions. Hopefully, it's to reveal student thinking and not just having them say the answer is five. You want to see how they got that to that number. You want to develop mathematical communication, which is very hard for students sometimes, and they get intimidated by that. And then promoting discussions and reasonings with peers. So, for us, we will have what's called participation, which means so part of their discussion grade is actually answering whatever question we've given them. And there's also the conversation with their peers within the classroom. So that may be part of your setup and it might not, but um, here's some characteristics of strong prompts. And you're going to see me mention AI a lot because it is very much in every class, I think. So we have to address it. And if just a few years ago we didn't, so it's really been moving quickly. I think a strong prompt should ask students to do more than just answer questions, as we mentioned before. For example, explain how you would solve the equation, why your method works, and what common mistakes a student might make. That might be hard for them, but you can kind of coach them through that. But it's more than just five. Um, and I think when possible, your questions should involve maybe multiple strategies. So it's good if you follow up with something like, is there another way to solve this? It's very tempting to just say, your answer is correct, and you move on. But I think it's good to keep a dialogue going, even if their answers are correct. So think about your questions and if they could lend themselves to that. If you want them to do your own work, and I'm sure you do, there, I think it's good to run your questions through AI and see what comes out of it. Because so what I did, we developed a new class, and for one of the first things I did was I wrote the discussion questions, and we have a lot. We have like I'll give each student a unique problem. So when I write discussion questions, it takes a long time because I want each student to have their own unique question, and then students can see what they did, and it's different from what their problem was, and so on. And I had a great discussion question. I thought it was fantastic. I even researched if AI could handle it and stuff. And then we launched the class like a year later. It takes a long time sometimes to put everything through. And my instructors, we have a great relationship, and they will come to me and tell me things that they're concerned about. And they told me ChatGPT can handle this really well. And I was very disappointed, but I didn't teach this class. They did. And I'm so thankful that they told me. So do test it. And then, unfortunately, probably a good idea to test it again later because I think AI gets better and better by the day. I also think it's a good idea to use images when you can. AI is getting better and better about that too. Um, so let me tell you a big mistake I made. I kind of mentioned it earlier, so anyone watching the recording has already heard this. But um, images need to be ADA compliant. And so you need to have what's called alt text. And what I have learned is you can't just have a graph and make the alt text say image of a graph. It has to clearly describe it. So if you closed your eyes and someone read this to you, you could kind of see what the graph looked like in your mind. That's how specific it has to be. So when I created another grade assignment, um, the our tech team came back and said, we'd love to help, but you have 98 images. And I was like, oh, I do? I just didn't even realize I had that many. And they didn't have time to, again, it's not just image of a graph. It's clearly explaining each image. And it was probably AI resistant, but there's no way I couldn't do it either. So I revised it. So if you use images, just keep in mind there is a little more labor involved to make it ADA compliant. And I hope you learn from my mistake of 98. Um, And I also think it's a good idea to include clear directions. So if they need to show their own work, make sure you state that. It's in our directions for every assignment that requires that. Um, because you don't want them to say, oh, I didn't know. If they can make revisions, make sure you state that too. I think it's a good idea to put due dates. The more that you can share with them, the better. Some ideas of text-based prompts would be a process, like explain each step, an error analysis, ask them to explain a mistake. So create a mistake and see if they can find it and see if they can solve it correctly. See if they can solve a problem using a different method. Explain why. So here's an example. Explain what the slope represents in this real world situation and how it affects the graph. Why is it increasing after x equals 5? Um, I find that's probably somewhat AI resistant. Again, AI is getting better and better about reading images, but um, run it through and test it. You can ask students to create a real world situation for a graph, for example. And one that I do think is, if not AI proof, it's AI resistant, and that's a reflection question. Asking students to examine their own understanding. For example, what did you learn about a problem solving strategy after you did the week 3 homework assignment? What week 3 topics did you feel most confident about? And what do you still struggle with? The reason I think that's pretty AI resistant is AI does not know what your class is doing in week 3. Unless they feed through the syllabus or something. Um, and this should be kind of not intimidating because they're just doing their own analysis of how they feel they're doing. And I do encourage you to respond when they reply to this, because if they say, I'm really struggling with this particular topic, remember to go back and respond with resources, examples, tips, tricks, and so on. And then you might want a question that encourages interaction with classmates. So again, respond to a classmate who did their problem in a different way than you did yours. What did you learn from it, and how did did your approaches differ? So, artificial intelligence can help us uh, create questions, and they can actually be used for questions. For example, and actually, both of these I've done or I'm going to do, both of these examples. Um, so we need to, I think, before you really start designing your prompts, you need to decide how much you're going to allow artificial intelligence use or not. Totally up to you, of course. Um, I've decided to embrace it partially for students. So this first example worked beautifully for me, and I'm putting it in a class that we haven't launched yet. But it's asking the student to ask AI to walk them through a concept, but have a back and forth interaction. So they would type in what I have in quotes there under the example, explain how to solve a system of equations using the substitution method. Then give me four problems with step-by-step prompts. Wait for my response to each prompt and give me feedback before generating the next problem. And I tried it and it worked really great. And then, yes, the students are copying and pasting all of that into the discussion area as their answer for this prompt. But you can see from the interaction that they actually did a back and forth learning session with AI. And I think it also teaches them that you can use AI to not just crank out the answer to a problem, which it does pretty well, but you can also show them that they can use AI to learn a concept. Because the more AI resistant we make our discussion prompts, the more they're going to realize, I need to know this. I mean, I hope they know that anyway, but um, so it's a great question, I think, and it allows them the freedom to use AI because they want to, and it's a really great learning opportunity for them. Another is like an AI career question. So this is one that we're using in a class now. It's asking them to state the degree they're seeking, then go to Chat GPT or whichever one you want them to use, and ask them to get Chat GPT to give them a real world application for a particular topic. Pick a topic of that particular week. Summarize it. So not this would not be a copy and paste unless you want it to be. Um, and then notice I'm putting summarize it in your own words, and then find a current topic. I mean, example from AI that shows how your future career uses this. And again, put it in your own words. So I actually am having them cite the source. I'm not taking off for that, but I think my English friends will be glad that we've got a head start on this, and I'll show them exactly how to cite it. But I don't take off for that. But if you do take off for it, it would be in your rubric, so that's okay. So those are two ideas for creating discussion prompts that allow them to use AI. I think assessment starts with a rubric. I mean, I know it starts with faculty input and deciding what kind of questions you want, but you also, if you're going to measure this and assess students, it's good to have a strong rubric to start with. So think about what you want to evaluate. Think about um, everything on the rubric needs to be something you can observe, and it should just measure one skill. And I know we talked about this earlier, but it's great to come up with a final answer. Um, but the process matters too. So I think it's good if your rubric shows questions about the process as well. And it encourages them to do their own work, we hope, right? Peer interaction can be evaluated as well. So, like I said, at South University, we have the discussion assignment, maybe solving a problem or a few problems, but we also have participation as a different part of their grade. And this is where they must interact with their students. For us, it's two responses to their classmates, but it's got to be a substantive response. It needs to move the discussion along. It needs to be mathematical. For example, things like asking a question about a step they don't understand, perhaps. Um, if a student is struggling, perhaps give them an example, a similar example that might be helpful. Um, However, saying, I agree, math is hard, I got the same thing, that would not count. But it's important to make it very clear. I think sometimes students think it's nothing but checking a box, but it really does serve a purpose if you have it and you want them to be able to interact and add to the conversation. So if that is something you do or want to do, I just suggest that you make it really clear what your expectations are for that part of it. And then I think it's very important to share the rubric with students ahead of time so they know what to expect. So I'll show you an example of a rubric. It's not the one I use, but it's just one with maybe some headings that you might not have thought about, maybe some criteria might not have thought about. But for us, and we use Brightspace, so D2L, and our rubrics, you just click on the box and it adds the score. You can still manually alter the score, so if it's within a range, but for the most part, click, 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 and that's the rubric part. We'll talk about more of it. Um, so you can see the engagement with peers at the bottom, but just make sure that you're really clear on how many peer exchanges you want to see. I think accurate record keeping is also important for assessing discussions because I find that students will tell me things in week one and I will maybe forget by week 4. And it's important information they've shared with me. For example, their preferred first name. So I'll have a spreadsheet and I'll have their name, contact information, academic counselor information, but I'll also put if they have a preferred first name, I think they like it when they see that you remember. And if I didn't have my spreadsheet, I wouldn't remember. They might share life events with you. That's not something, so your spreadsheet would just be for you, but they might share that they are going through a tragedy, or they are moving, or they are caring for sick family members. I mean, they might be going through a lot, and then hopefully they'll share also what they're studying because you can use that to support them in a relevant way. So if they're struggling with a particular concept, instead of just saying, well, here's an example, you might find an example, and AI can help with this, relevant to their area of study, and they might find that a lot more meaningful than just some random example. So I think it's helpful for to have a spreadsheet to keep all that straight. And this isn't a university requirement where I work, but I ask the math instructors to send an at-risk report to academic counselors each week. Um, this is just to have another set of eyes seeing who is at risk, who is in danger of failing. We do a lot of outreach, but academic counselors maybe have been working with these students for a really long time, and they can reach out to them. And students who are kind of not so sure if they want to talk to us might be more comfortable communicating with their academic counselors. So that's what we do. I don't know if it's something you would be interested in, but I just thought I'd share it. Also, what you will note on your spreadsheet, hopefully, would be you might see trends. Like, for example, my that week 2 discussion that I thought was so great. If I was teaching that class, I would see, well, everyone's getting 100, everyone, which, is that because you have to evaluate that? Is it because I'm a fantastic instructor, or is it because it's so much lends itself to AI that everyone's using AI and maybe I should revise it. So you can kind of see pain points as well. So if you're seeing a lot of very low scores, as you glance at your spreadsheet or your grade book, whatever's easier for you to review, instead of just, oh, well, everyone failed that assignment, it's a good indicator of maybe a need to revise the rubric or the discussion prompts or whatever other assignments you have. So it's just good to look at that and not just say, oh, well. Um, when creating discussions, AI resources can help a lot. They can not only generate um, discussion prompts sometimes, if you ask them to make them AI resistant. I don't think, frankly, AI does that very well. But it can give you great resources to help your students. So if you are assessing them and they're struggling, you can ask AI to create some examples for students in their particular area of study. So think about that. It gives you, instead of you hunting, trying to find examples, it takes a lot of time away from you and can create some that you can use. It can create real world scenarios that you can use. It could even make suggestions for manipulatives if you want to demonstrate a concept. And you can there's virtual manipulatives that are pretty great. Um, and again, it can generate problems on an individual level if you, instead of just giving the students, a particular student, let's say, an example that you've already shared and you're out of examples, AI can create a new one. It can even generate project ideas and even generate AI generated quizzes. Now, there is definitely an AI benefit for students, and it does not mean generate solutions for me. It can be, um, well, kind of like what we talked about before, where it can be a learning exchange, a back and forth learning exchange. So we talked about that. And that's the example you see here in the middle of the slide. But there's also resources. I don't know if anyone's used Alex, but Alex can be used in an adaptive learning way. So what that means is um, a student will do a problem, and based on how they do with that problem, Alex will generate the next problem. It might have to go back and remediate. It might move on to the next topic. So it's adaptive. Now we use Alex some, but we do not use the adaptive learning part of it, which is a shame because it's fantastic. And the only reason we don't use it is because our classes are 5 weeks long and students just were not getting through it. But I really do like the theory of it. So students really get targeted progression based on how how they're doing. So I liked it. It's just something to consider. We did pilot that adaptive part of it, and again, our students just had trouble finishing. But I do like it. I think it's helpful. Um, and you can share with students that even if this isn't an assigned problem, you can share with them, you know, they don't, if they're not getting the information they need from a textbook, and let's face it, not every textbook is written in a friendly way for students, you can tell them, you can ask AI to explain a topic to you and not just explain um, factoring. You can ask it to work with you and go through one question at a time. So I think it would help if you give them the exact wording that would generate a good exchange for AI. But I think students who can see that they can use AI and it's not cheating to have them walk them through a concept, I think that's a big plus too. There's also a game theory for learning. I do want to point out a game I happen to like a lot. It's called SET, and it uses pattern recognition and logical reasoning to play the game. I think it's fun. I share it with my students because in one of my classes we work on logic, and it's fun. Um, and there's also a cool little calculus and virtual reality website that I enjoy. So. You can also use AI. I'm not trying to make this whole thing about AI. I just wanted to mention that you can use AI for your feedback. So as you are assessing students and deciding what points to give them based on your rubric, I think it's helpful to give them important feedback as you assess them. So it is very tempting to say, you missed problems 2 and 3 because you made careless calculation errors. Double check your work going forward. That's accurate, I guess, but not super helpful. I wouldn't like to see that especially. Um, but I ran it through ChatGPT and said, add some encouragement. And it said, you missed problems 2 and 3 due to some small calculation errors. Be sure to take a moment to double check your work next time. You're on the right track, and with a bit more attention to detail, you'll continue to improve and succeed. Much better. Um, I just think sometimes as math teachers, we just want to, it's right, it's wrong, this is why, and move on. We try not to, but it's just tempting to fall into that. And ChatGPT does a great job of generating something a little more friendly and more helpful. Also, I do suggest that instead of just taking that from ChatGPT, add support resources to your feedback when you're assessing your students. For example, do you have videos in your class? Maybe you could link to them or tell them where they could find them. Do you have a tutoring center? If so, how do they find it? Is it 24/7? Even how to get to the textbook. Sometimes students just want to get to the questions in the back. Um, or materials in your library. You might have an academic success center. Um, so make sure they know the resources because even though you might give them to them in the beginning of the class in your announcements, it's probably a safe bet that they've forgotten it as time moves on. I have to mention week one. Um, it sounds like this isn't really about assessing discussions, but kind of it is because I think students in week one are overwhelmed. Actually, I was just in a meeting before this at my university about students who are terrified to take math. And this wasn't a meeting of just math people, it was all disciplines. So math got the flashlight on them. But um, what can we do to make them feel like this is going to be okay? I think it's a really good idea to be as prompt as possible when you're responding during week one. I don't know if you have a student lounge area, discussion area, a questions for the professor area, or even just your first week's discussion area, but try to be present as much as you possibly can, especially that first week, because they they're terrified, and I think will feel more willing to ask you questions when they see that you are available, and that you do want them to succeed. I have a lot of students tell me things like, um, I've never had a math teacher who wanted me to be successful. I find that hard to believe, but I believe them. And for them to think, wow, you really are a warm, caring person and you want them to do well, it goes a long way for the rest of the class. And then I do think your assessment feedback will be better received when they realize that um, you are approachable. So I think it's important to set a positive tone at the very beginning. More on tone a little bit. I think your feedback and assessment tone should be clear. You don't have to go overly flowery with the language. It can be clear and respectful. I think it's good to acknowledge effort when appropriate. It is sometimes hard to do, I know, but try to find something to praise. Even this will sound ridiculous, but even if it's you found the right problem, and I don't mean that in a patronizing way, but just everyone wants to hear something that they did right. Even if they just put an answer, okay, well, that was great. You probably did the work on scratch paper, but I need to see what you did. I need to see your work so I can tell you, great job on all the work. Try to find something to praise and offer specific guidance for improvement. So, my example earlier, you know, you made careless mistakes. That's not that clear, is it? So, I think it's good to show exactly where they made a mistake and encourage them about the support resources that we talked about. Encourage revisions if it's permitted. So for us, we have a first attempt due day, and then they can make revisions through the end of the week. So we go back and forth in the discussion area with feedback. They revise, more feedback, revise, hopefully. Um, I definitely think that could be communicated better because sometimes our students do not come back and look at my feedback. Well, they can bring their grade up. So if you permit revisions, really try hard to encourage it and explain it to them and let them know this can get better. And in the grade book, instead of just clicking on the rubric, if that's what you use, also include an explanation about why points were deducted. Try not to use vague or dismissive comments. Like, again, careless errors is not necessarily hostile, but it doesn't tell them very much. Don't only focus on what they did wrong. Make sure you give them guidance on how they can improve. Um, don't sound judgmental. Don't assume they know what to fix. Remember, a lot of them are scared, and it's very gutsy of them to post something in the discussion area for everyone to see. So keep that in the back of your mind too. And again, we don't want to be harsh with our wording. You can clearly say where a mistake was made without putting them down. So here are some examples of tone again. So saying you didn't follow the directions. I would really be unhappy if someone wrote that to me. But you could say some directions were missed, and clarify which ones and explain how to improve next week. So if they still have the opportunity to revise, let them know that. If they don't, it's really important that they know how they can improve next week. Too many calculation errors, that's vague, right? So explain what the calculation errors are and how they can improve next time. Try to keep the focus on how they can improve. Even if they can't improve this week, maybe they can use something they learned to improve next week. Incomplete work. Again, that's not clear. It's not friendly. You can say some steps were missing. Um, and I think it's a good idea to show them an example of what a proper solution would look like. Not the exact problem, but a different one. Um, so I won't read all this to you because it's kind of long, but this looks like you have to be kidding me, Ruth. Is this really what you would write? But this is an example of saying something they did right. Okay, noting something they kind of understood the Pythagorean theorem because they got to c squared equals 16. That's super close, but We want to know what C is, not C squared, and here's how you do that. And then there's an example attached. Always ask them if they have questions. And then looking forward to next week, think about these resources, um, and I'm here to help you. And I try to, with most, I try when I respond in the discussion area or when I'm assessing them in the gradebook area to include my name and contact information. I definitely have it in every announcement because they don't want to have to go hunt for the syllabus and find it. Okay, grade book assessment examples. If the student did nothing, okay, it's hard to find something to praise, right? But saying this is very disappointing, you didn't try at all. I don't, are they going to want to try next week? They might not. But if you say, I can still accept this, explain your late policy if you have one, and expectations or whatever your rules are, explain all that, but just I didn't see it. I want great things for you. Try to be positive and encourage questions. Um, so here's something that I say in every math department meeting, and I'm sure the math instructors are sick of it, but I don't care. Students have so many challenges. Um, they have, they actually have told me, I'm sure they share this with you, so I'm not telling you anything new. But they have told me nobody in my family thinks I can do this. They might be the first person in their family to go to college, and nobody thinks they can do it. I think that's heartbreaking. Um, or they did had great struggles in math in high school. So now here they are taking a math class that they don't want to take, and they are afraid. Um, and then they've got all the life situations. They could be caregivers. They're dealing with a divorce. They're moving. There's so many situations um, that they've got going on, that maybe a student going from high school directly to college would have less of all that. So our adult learners are really facing a lot. And what I say every time I meet with the math instructors is you might be the only positive person in their life. And it is sad to say that, it breaks my heart, but I do think it can be true. You could be the only positive voice they hear all day or all week or whatever. So you saying, again, assess them appropriately and be fair, but saying, I know you can do this really makes a big difference in how they perceive their ability. And I think it can really make a difference in their success. So always try to find something to praise, try to be uplifting and encouraging and offer help and all the resources. All right, so I'll get to the ADA part of this in a second. If those of you who are on in the tech side of this are probably ahead of me. Um, so I'll get to that. But again, make sure your gradebook comments are clear and specific and aligned with university policies. Acknowledge effort or progress. It could even be progress, even if they did not do well. Excuse me. Um, Maybe they did better than last week. They did one more thing. That's again where your spreadsheet could really help. You can see that they've made improvement. They'd love to know that you noticed that. Make sure you show them the relevant resources to help them to continue to improve. And then think about light, fun visuals. So this is not something I've done, but when I was visiting someone's course, I saw this and I thought this looks fantastic. And it's fun and it's colorful. But it is quite likely that just putting the good job square would not be ADA compliant. I'm positive it's not. So I just ask that if you're going to put one of these, and you can use these, if you want to use one of these, just make sure like underneath you type in the words great job or whatever, just so that we're ADA compliant. It was just something I didn't even think about. And then just recently I learned, well, even those, as fun as they are, unless you're, and I don't know if within our grade book we can do alt text within the grade book image. So that's something I need to think about, but it's just faster for the instructors to just type under it or over it, what the words actually say. So tuck that in the back of your mind. It's just something I have been, um, remiss about considering. So, Oops. Okay, we need to talk about plagiarism a little bit. And the reason I say just a little bit is because you really need to understand what your university does to handle these situations. It's another reason why we talk about clearly saying in the discussion, um, not the feedback, but in the discussion assignment, clearly put if this needs to be their own words, what maybe they can use class resources, but not outside resources. I'll put that in so they can use like the PowerPoint I created, maybe, or a PDF I've created, or a video I've put in. They can use all that, but they can't use outside resources. So I'm very specific with telling them what they can and cannot use. And I will say, when it's not one of those AI questions, you can't use AI either. Um, but that's just me. So you might have a different approach to this. So just make sure that you're very clear about what they can and cannot use. Um, when you suspect plagiarism, try not to directly say you cheated, and don't say anything like that in the discussion area in a public forum. I would honestly say your answers are right. You might even get a discussion going. How would you change this? Treat them like everyone else. But then, like for us, we have to reach out to them first. So I will send an email just saying, your post kind of looks like what I found here. Tell me about it. And then the next step after that would be to go to our student affairs department and report it. So, but that's just us. So make sure you know the procedure for your institution. But I never accuse ever. Oh, until academic affairs comes back and said, yes, we agree. They have a template of a letter we send. So I'm doing everything exactly by the book, and I'm not accusing them because I'm not perfect. I could be wrong. So, um, and again, in a public discussion area, avoid accusations. Just respect them as much as you would every other student. Within the grade book itself, though, I still won't accuse. Because even though they are the only ones that can see their grade, well, actually, they're not. Their academic counselor can see that feedback too, at least for us. So I will just say, enter whatever score academic affairs says I should put there, or student affairs, and I'll refer to the email I sent on this date. And that preserves their privacy even there. So, again, all this to say, make sure you know what the rules are within your university. So let's talk about some action items, and then we'll have a chance to chat for the last few minutes that we have. This is just a little summary. Um, I think everything starts with faculty collaboration. Your faculty has so many uh, great resources and ideas. Again, I've never had a meeting when we have this feedback session where I didn't use some ideas. Sometimes I use a lot of them, and I'm thankful for that. It makes the classes so much better. Um, and when you're designing discussion prompts, think about a critical thinking approach. Make sure your prompts are clear, and think about how you want to use AI if you even do. But make that decision. That would be a good discussion with faculty as well. My faculty, some are all in, and some don't want students to use it at all. Well, I don't either when we tell them you're just solving a problem and it's got to be your own work. So I do understand what they're saying, but some of them don't want to use it in any other way either. So it's so new, it's just hard. It's just helpful to have a really great conversation with your instructors. Make sure your rubric is clear, and make sure students know what the rubric will be. Set up a good record keeping system. I think the spreadsheet is one way that could be really helpful. Some people want to write it out. That's fine too, but just something to where you can kind of have a nice picture going through the course of how your students are doing. And again, I think it's a good idea to use the AI tools for generating prompts or refining your feedback, but you can also use it as part of your discussion problems if you want to. Um, remember your first week of class to be welcoming and attentive and be available as much as you possibly can because it will really help them feel that you are approachable and I do believe it'll build their confidence. And your tone, be encouraging. It doesn't have to be all fluff, but I think something positive is really, really helpful. Try to find something to praise. Make sure you know your institution's policies on plagiarism and even AI generated work. This is very, very new. So our institution is still working on it too. So it's very, very hard. We don't have it figured out yet. I have found that Turnitin um, is at least what I have found. I found Turnitin does not do a great job catching it. So it's very, very tough. Um, but anyway, work that through with your university. It's a great conversation to keep having. Your feedback, your assessment feedback should direct students to resources that they can use to improve. And all of this creates a growth mindset when you're telling them, I know you can do it. Here are the tools to do it. I think it reinforces that growth mindset. And then reflection. You don't have to, I mean, it depends on your university, but you don't have to be stuck with your discussion prompts if they're not working. I am very thankful I was able to make the changes I was able to make based on the mistakes I shared with you. Um, so it's okay. Revisit, talk to your instructors also, not just the meeting where you brainstorm, but follow up after the course has launched or the revised course has launched and see what they think and see if anything needs to be adjusted. You might need to even adjust the rubric. Um, so it's good to revisit it and don't think the course is launched, I'm done with it. It's just important to come back and look at it. So I'm going to leave this up there for a quick second, but we do have a few minutes left. So, well, this is on the, you know what, I'm going to stop sharing because this is on the slide in that resources area. So I'm going to stop sharing and there you are. See if anybody has any thoughts. I would like to learn from you as well. So, do you have other ideas for um, assessing discussions or how to make them better? I mean, ideas I haven't thought of. I'm sure you do. I'd love to know. Any thoughts or any questions or any brainstorming we can do? And you can use the chat box or you can use your microphone, whatever you would like. And if you're a course designer, let me know if I haven't thought of something. That the ADA thing is a um, big learning curve for me. So 98 images was not great.
Hi, Ruth. I did have a thing I just wanted to make sure that I pointed out too, because we ran into that same issue with the
Did
math
you?
courses and graphs.
Yeah,
And our solution ended up being video, recording very detailed and annotated videos, having the instructors record them, because then we could put it into something that would generate a transcript
right.
that would have the alt text basically, because even adding alt text in some places you're limited to like 300 characters and that doesn't get graphs. It
I did
just
not know
doesn't.
that. Thank you.
Mm-mm.
Really? So alt text has just 300 characters?
Well, it depends. So like we use Canvas, and in Canvas it only lets you do a certain amount or it flags it for being too much alt text.
Okay.
So we worked with one of
Uh-oh.
our math instructors who had really complicated graphs and like they had to be in the class. There was no like, oh, we'll
Right.
just not use them. He had to use them. So we worked with him to do a very annotated video where he went in with a cursor on the graph and was like, this on the x-axis we have this, on the y-axis we have this, on this we have this, and like very detailed. And it was something only the instructor could create because we as instructional designers had no clue what was happening. That was kind of our workaround for some of that accessibility requirement because we did have a student in the class that needed it.
That's so That is really great. And so I am taking notes. If you think I'm looking down at my phone, I'm not. I'm making notes. Because
Yeah,
that's a great idea. Can I ask you a question, follow up?
sure. Hmm.
So we have we give each student their own problems.
Hmm.
And so we might have 30 students in a class, maybe more. And each student gets their own individual problem. Um,
Hmm.
and so I can't imagine our instructors creating 30
Mm.
different videos. Would it be but we can use like could I create a video for each problem? Do you think? I mean, I know you don't work at South University, but if I
Hmm.
create the video tool we use is called Kaltura, and it does
Yeah.
okay, so it does the captioning for you.
Hmm.
Um, do you think that might work? I'll talk to my team, of course, but what do you think of that
Yeah,
idea?
we used Kaltura too. We just transitioned to Echo 360,
Mhm.
that also does the auto transcripts, and that was kind of our workaround was record the video, upload it to Kaltura or Echo 360 so that you get those transcripts because then they're like 95-ish% accurate, much more than the YouTube auto transcripts, and that was kind of our workaround for some of those things. Hmm.
That is a great idea, and I think we have agreement in the chat area.
You could
Um,
also, if the students get like an individual graph generated to them, there are certain AIs that will do alt text. I think Arizona State University has something that will do like image to alt text kind of things. Those are slowly coming out. Sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not. And then it does kind of end up relying on the individual who's teaching the course generating those questions to verify the accuracy.
right.
But that's also been kind of helpful for us too, especially as an instructional designer, where I'm like, I have no clue what's happening here.
Absolutely, and you shouldn't have to. I love these ideas, and it looks like someone else said they love the idea. Someone said, "Oh, I do want to mention jumping down to the bottom. The slides are there. If you go to more and then resources, you'll see them. But if you can't find them, you can send me an email, and I will type my email here. Sorry. Okay, so I put my email in the chat box. If you can't find the slides or want to reach out to me, feel free. And then someone said we have a program at De Anza, I hope I'm saying that right, college that has embedded tutoring, embedded counseling, and extended time for the classroom. We support both non-STEM and STEM majors. Program has been into, oh, and Calculus 3. I wish we had Calculus 3. I love that. That's really interesting. And the embedded, when you say embedded, can you expand on that a little bit? How are we doing on time? We still have a couple minutes. If you're able to type out what you mean like
In class
within,
counseling. In class counseling during the second hour. So the way the program works is the lecture will be during the first hour, and during the second hour of instruction is a 5 unit course and no additional cost to the student in regards to tuition. So during the second hour, there's embedded tutoring, embedded counseling. So the embedded counseling component is that my role will be to check in with students, making sure they have their registration date correct, priority registration, but also giving them updates regarding grade reports, checking in with at-risk students. We also have an in-class tutor during the second hour of instruction, which will be supporting the professor uh, at the same time. So the professor can be checking in with a few group of students, while the tutor can also be reaching out to other students as well. So it's a program that's really proactive in reaching out to students immediately if they're at risk of not passing the course. But we also do workshops quarterly that involve like study skills, transferring from De Anza College to a four-year university. We're a California community college in Cupertino, California. But the program has been at De Anza for like 20 plus years. Uh, we have a high success rate as well.
that is that, so you have synchronous classes. Am I
Uh, there is one course that is online that is a virtual class. The majority of our courses, they're calculus and pre-calc that we offer in person. There is a stats course, statistics that for non-STEM majors, which we have a lot of those students at our college.
Mhm.
It's a high success rate specifically for that course as well. We have a great professor, which the professor does. provide extension on homework assignments. So it gives students an opportunity to get to a 70% to pass a course. So if a student falls behind, there's other opportunities versus just depending on strictly on exam or quizzes as their only passing form. So there's students can get caught up, pass a course even by the 10th week of the quarter. So but in regards to pre-calculus and calculus, subjects a little bit different than the statistics, um, because for other reasons. But we definitely try to support students as much as possible. So it's a great program. I went through it myself when I was a student there, but now I'm
Did
a
you?
faculty for the counseling component.
Well, that's a great testimonial. I'm so glad you
Mm.
shared that. I really am. Um, yeah, so every class we have is asynchronous, and I'll have excuse me, live sessions that are optional. So it's something I would love to have something like that where um at built into the class they've got this other support and instead of just me. So I love that you do that. I'm gonna kind of I might reach out to you for more information because I'd love to know a little bit more.
I included the website in the chat. It's a great
Oh, good. You
program.
did.
Mhm.
You're right. You absolutely did. I will be looking at that. Thank you. Great information. Um, yes, and as I mentioned, we do have the slides available. Just go to more and then resources and you'll see them there. But again, I have my email address there. If you're having trouble finding it, you're certainly welcome to reach out. Um, I'm showing we just have a couple of minutes left. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add or um, anything else we can brainstorm? Because I've got great ideas that I'm going to take back to my team. You're welcome. Thanks for being here. I learned so much from you. Everybody that interacted, and I hope you got something you can take to your institution. So I appreciate you joining, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.